game we're going to talk about, we're going to get after it early. All right, we got Ohio State traveling to Happy Valley as 3.5 point favorites. Now you look at this, and when I look at Ohio State, I'm like, that team is immensely more talented than Penn State. I think across the board. I think at their skill positions, I think even in the running back room, they're more talented. The only spot that I really think Ohio State struggles to match up with Penn State is on Ohio State's offensive line. They've struggled, and as a result, this play from Ohio State that we've gotten the last couple of weeks has been insufficient for what their expectations of this team were. And it is not on Will Levis, as we talked about 100 times on this show. No matter how many other shows, no matter how many other podcasts, no matter how many other people, pundits, whatever, are going to say that Will Howard can't win a national championship with this team, they're wrong. Right? They are wrong. There is something wrong with this team, but it is not Will Howard.
Yeah, absolutely. You talk about, signs of concern for sure. Now here's the thing though. Winning cures all, right? So they go out in Happy Valley and they get a big win here, big noon kickoff, which by the way, side note, is criminal. This isn't a whiteout game. If you're a Buckeye fan, if you are Ohio State, you are thanking your lucky stars there over at Fox for bailing you out, because we know how tough it is to play in that whiteout. We know how exciting it is for college football, for that whiteout to be a big time game. Since when was the last time Penn State was playing Ohio State as the higher ranked team? Holy cow. It's been a long time. I have to feel like that. Yeah, I look at the other side of the ball here, and to me, the key is going to be for Penn State to run the football, right? No matter who is at quarterback. Drew Lara got banged up. Bo Pribula came in, played really, really well against Wisconsin. Also adds a different dimension with his legs to this offense, which opens up some holes for, Kay Allen and Nick Singleton. They've been inconsistent, I think is the right word to say, between those two. I thought both of them played well at times on the road at Wisconsin. They come back home here against a really good front seven, a really athletic front seven. But we also saw that same front seven, Jordan James and that offensive line for Oregon had its way with them at times. And Dylan Gabriel had a lot of time back there too. So if you can replicate that kind of success with your O-line, opening up holes, your running backs running the ball well, and having time to sit back there and pick apart, not, I wouldn't call a leaky secondary, but one battling injuries, right? And also one that can be had if, by the way, it's college football too. So if your offensive line gives you time, like, you can only cover for so long. It's just the way it works right now. So to me, that's what I look for. It's like, we've seen Penn State in these big time games now against Ohio State and Michigan the past couple of years, and their defense has battled and kept them in these games, and they just can't separate them. They can't, take that big step with your offense. And Drew Alar has struggled. We know the offensive coordinators have struggled. The O-line has struggled. They can't run the ball. To me, on third down, we talked about this in the summer, on third downs against Ohio State and Michigan, they were atrocious. To me, that's where you have to make progress. Sustaining drives, keeping this offense off the field for Will Howard and Ohio State, and not letting them get their running game going. A lot of keys to the game, I guess, here for Penn State. If I have to give you my pick right now, I'll go Ohio State. Right? I just think, and I just don't know. I guess I haven't been super, super impressed with Penn State. I mean, I know they're winning football games. I know they're covering in a lot of instances, and their schedule, I think, looks a little bit better than maybe you kind of just think, if you can recall. Like, West Virginia's playing pretty good football right now. Illinois is still ranked in there, which I guess, depending on who you ask, it doesn't really matter. I still think they're, an okay team here in the Big Ten. And then as well as USC, much better than their record shows at, 4-4. And then Wisconsin on the road too. They've been playing good football. So their schedule has been, not impressive, but it's not like they've played nobody and they haven't been tested at all. But I still think Ohio State's collection of talents, right, 1 through 22 on this team, is really, really good. And I think they're going to play with an edge. I think they have a little bit of backs to their wall. And I do think they can still make the playoffs if they lose a close game on the road here to Penn State, because it's going to be chaotic. It's going to be chaotic month of November. Teams are going to lose behind them.
Problem is, like, they don't. What wins can they get that propels them with 2 losses that you can say with confidence, like, yeah, that's a better resume than this other team with 1 loss.
That's gonna be the thing. It's gonna be eye test. It's gonna be, we know this team is one of the best teams in the country, and then Indiana. By the way, that also puts that Indiana game, if Kirschberg's healthy, that puts a lot of pressure on that game there. So I think what's crazy to say at this point, and which I didn't think so coming in the year, like Penn State almost has a little bit more margin for error than Ohio State does. And that's why I think backs against the wall, talented football team, even on the road, laying a little bit over a field goal, which is tough, right? We're picking at 3.5. I'll go Ohio State to win, and obviously I'll take them to cover as well.
Yeah, I think I'm giving a little bit of edge to Penn State to cover that 3.5, just based on the way that these teams have been playing football. And quite frankly, I don't care who's playing quarterback for Penn State. I think it's going to look pretty similar. And I think Previla did a really nice job when he filled in. Uh, but I think I'll take Ohio State to win. So this is kind of a dumb middle, right? I mean, statistically, this is pretty tough for Ohio State to win and Penn State to also cover. But that's what I think I'm going to do. I think this is going to like come down to the wire here. It's going to be a low scoring football game. I'm trying to find what the total's at right here. I think we got, yeah, it's 46.5. And I want to take the under in that game, but I think there's too many good athletes on the field to really be taking an under in a game like this.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be a little bit upset that I didn't include on my best bets if it does hit. So definitely thought about it, but here we are. I'll take Penn State to cover, Ohio State to win. And I think both teams just need to play clean football, right? Ohio State needs to prove that they can like legitimately stop the run. Like the last two games that they've, Nebraska and Oregon team, they kind of, well, Oregon ran the ball really well, but that's a much better offensive line. Nebraska didn't struggle to run the ball. Like they weren't afraid to run the ball. And I think Penn State will not be afraid to run the football. And if Ohio State can't stop that run game, which by the way, I thought was going to be a strength of this team, right? That front seven, as well as that secondary. I just thought Ohio State's defense was going to be better than it actually has been this year. I still think there's room to improve. Jim Knowles, time and time again, has both upset Ohio State fans, but also I think has elevated his teams on the defensive side of the ball many a times, no matter what team he's coaching and who he's coaching against. So I do think that Ohio State's defense can do enough here to win. And I think Will Howard is going to be the X factor. And I think people are going to see that, oh, okay, like Ohio State can win with Will Howard playing quarterback, which, if he didn't already prove that last week, then I think he's going to do that again this week.
I mean, he gets a lot of hate for the weird clock situation, right, that happened against Oregon. And it's obviously like that is on him, right? He is a senior. Like he should not be making that kind of play. But he also played a fantastic game. I think he'll learn from it. He also, not that he hasn't played in big time games, but like it's a little different, being a top 5 matchup than it is playing, a top 25 ranked matchup. A little bit different feeling there, especially on the road. Another game on the road here, going to Penn State. I want to ask you this. In terms of coordinator matchups, I mean, that's where I look in this game. Like, where can you find an edge here? And you've got some great, I think, great coordinators. You got Andy Kotelnicki and Tom Allen, offensive defense coordinator for Penn State, against Chip Kelly and Jim Knowles, offensive coordinator, defense coordinator for Ohio State. They respectively. Is there an edge you see, or is there a matchup you want to focus on? Where do you think the difference in this game is going to be in terms of the coaching matchup?
Man, I think a lot of it comes down to Chip Kelly. Like, can he get that run game going? Right, like that's going to be a big deal right there. I know I talked about Will Howard, kind of him being the X factor, but do something to help him out, right? Like you have two of the best running backs in college football. I know your offensive line is not playing well. I know Penn State's defense is absolutely spectacular, but you have to do something in the run game. And I think Chip Kelly, that's probably a focus in some of their meetings these days. And then Kotelnicki, if he can dial it up and, generates a couple explosive plays on the ground game and set up, whoever's playing quarterback there at Penn State to they don't have as good of weapons, right, as Oregon does to take advantage of, whatever Ohio State's secondary was in that game against Oregon. So it's going to be these offensive coordinator matchups. I think the defenses are going to give you. I think it's going to come down to, can Kotelnicki generate explosive plays in the ground game, and can Chip Kelly do anything in the run game, is where I think that comes down to. I don't think that there's a huge coaching edge on either side right here. I think Ryan Day is a good coach. I think James Franklin is a good coach. I think Chip Kelly is a good offensive coordinator. I think Andy Kotelnicki is a good offensive coordinator. I think Tom Allen is a good defensive coordinator, and I also think that Jim Knowles is a really good defensive coordinator.
Yeah, absolutely. To me, the one thing I do worry about is I know there's a ton of talent on Penn State's D line. And obviously, Danny Dunn-Sutton, star defensive end there for him. He's been banged up. I think he had a groin injury against Wisconsin, hoping he can play in this game for Penn State. But they have struggled to really get home the past couple weeks, against inferior potential offenses or inferior offensive lines. USC, right? That offensive line has struggled to keep Miller Moss upright all year, and they had 1 sack in that game. Wisconsin, with inferior offense. I know they've got some pretty good tackles and pretty good offensive line play there, but they had 0 sacks in that game. What's crazy is I think Wisconsin probably has a better offensive line than Ohio State, especially with the injuries there. That could be an X factor. That is something that if I'm watching the first quarter and they are just getting destroyed on that left side of the line, I'm going to be really worried. And that might be a live bet scenario, no matter what the score is for Penn State, because if you can't protect Will Howard, right, you can't run the ball on the road. It could be a long day for Ohio State. Not that they'll get blown out, but that would be pretty catastrophic for Ohio State fans there. And lastly, too, I do want to mention Kotelnicki. You brought him up, or we've been talking about him. The misconception about him, and I say this every time we talk about Penn State, because I know we got new listeners, new fans. If you're new, please subscribe, please like, all that good stuff. But he was brought in, and everyone's like, oh, Drew Allar is going to take that next step. He's going to be an NFL quarterback. He's going to be a first-round guy. They're going to be an all Big Ten offense there with Drew Allar throwing the football. And while he's been better this year for sure, part of it has been due because he's so good, Kotelnicki, at getting them to run the ball well. Explosive run plays you talked about, good schemes, like just dialing up these run plays to help Allar, to help Bo Pribula, whoever's in there. To me, that's massive. And that's the difference between, I think, Penn State this year, which gives them a real chance to win this football game that they haven't had in past years, with not being able to just run the ball well. But again, I still think Ohio State, I don't love it. Not going to bet it. Absolutely not. I'm just going to sit back and enjoy it. 11 a.m. Sheesh. What are we doing? What are we doing, Big Ten?